Comics.
Because they have no home.
I'm Joe Getcho.
And I'm Mike White, and this is the podcast We Like Comics because they have no bones.
No, they don't.
Find us on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast or on Blue Sky Social at Boneless Comics 1.
That's right. We are a clean comic book podcast where we chat about comics from Marvel, DC, IDW, Dark Horse, Image, and a lot more. Find extra content on bonelesscomicspodcast.com and look for our after shows and bonus content on our YouTube channel at Boneless Comics Podcast. And don't forget to hit subscribe, click the notification bell, get updates, make comments. Just love us.
That's love right. Us. Just love us.
Don't just like us.
This episode, we're wrapping up season 4 and looking back at our reviews from 2024. So we're going to break down your favorite episodes, our favorite episodes, and even the ones that didn't get a whole lot of love, which some of that may be due to it's only been up for 5 days or something. But, we'll see when we get there.
Yeah. Well, we will go over all of those stats for nerds. We'll also give you some surprise hits and some sneak peeks at what is coming in 2025, including villains, millennial nostalgia, and of course, Star Trek and Star Wars, because, we always have to talk about those. So we'll take a short little break, give you some highlights from our year of 2024, and we'll be right back. The New Warriors, the kids are all fight.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Dot Hack X Fourth. Dragon Ball Z.
JLA, The Tornado's Path.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Steelworks. Cloak and Dagger Shades of Grey.
Pearl number 1 through 12.
Darkwing Duck. The X-Files Season 10 Volume 5.
Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The Dog of War.
The Star Wars comic Star Wars Thrawn.
Doctor Who, Empire of the Wolf. The all-new fantasy series Edenwood.
Hawkeye versus Deadpool. All right, we're back. Well, this season we recorded 16 episodes, 16 after shows, and 8 bonus videos, totaling 28 hours of content. We covered everything from superhero classics like Justice League of America, The Tornado's Path, and indie gems like Pearl and Edenwood. We explored some manga with Dragon Ball Z and .hack XXXX or X4th. Yeah. Dove into some TV show tie-ins like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The X-Files, and we celebrated some nostalgia and some classic favorites like Darkwing Duck. So we had a really fun year and tried to cover a whole lot of things other than just Marvel and DC.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy with the variety of stuff that we covered this year. Like, I feel like we really branched out into some properties that we normally don't look at, as well as hit a few of the things at the big two that I'd kind of been going, wow, have we really not done a Justice League comic yet? Wow, have we really not covered New Warriors yet? Some of that stuff. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the amount that we got done in the last year. I didn't realize it was 28 hours, though.
It's quite a bit. I think last year, 2023 was like 26 hours.
Okay.
So we also did some like additional bonus content that was like either kind of short, or we did a couple of video games like Sonic and Knuckles and stuff like that. So I think we tried to do a lot of variety and kind of mix things up a little bit this year. So I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the Sonic 3 and Knuckles gameplay that we did, I think it's fun, especially because of the green on my shirt that allows you to see gameplay through my body while we're playing. So you should definitely go check that out.
For anyone in video recording, don't wear a green shirt in front of a green screen, because that doesn't tend to work out so well in a home studio.
Yeah, that wasn't a good plan.
So Green Lantern episodes, you need to use a blue screen instead of a green screen, because I can never wear my Green Lantern shirt when I have that going on.
No.
All right, so in terms of our episodes, our first or highest ranked episode as far as total plays is Buffy the Long Way Home. And that's kind of interesting that, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was by far, it had 146 plays across YouTube and Spotify. And the next one down was Deep Space Nine, The Dog of War, which had 90. So, Buffy is by far the winner.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that, are there just that many Buffy fans out there, or people are just looking for more Buffy stuff? Was it that our review was excellent. Maybe we just, had good chemistry that episode. Maybe because it was a really good comic, our average score was 3.75, which is not, super high, but it's still pretty decent. So could be a lot
Yeah,
of
I
different
mean,
factors.
I think, I mean, I don't know, but I think honestly that there's probably a lot of people out there that remember the show fondly and are kind of looking back and going, oh, I want more of this, or I remember that show. And maybe we're getting hits from people that wouldn't normally listen to our podcast because they're like, oh, hashtag Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Cool. I'll check that out because I'm in that fandom. So that's one of the kind of fun things about our podcast is that we get to sort of do the shotgun approach with fandoms of like, yes, we do Marvel and DC, but there's like so much other stuff out there that has comics based on it that we can kind of pull from, lots of corners of nerdy things. So, and that one was fun to review. Like there was a lot to talk about, and it was, I think our experience with the show was like slightly different too, because I'd seen a little bit more of it. So it was just a good discussion in general. So hopefully it's that people like our content as well as they just like Buffy, but I'm really surprised to see Deep Space Nine in the top 5. Honestly, I've always felt like that's the Star Trek show that was sort of less appreciated, and certainly when it was on the air, it was the lowest rated Star Trek show of any of them. Like during and their viewership fell off like more and more as the seasons went on, which is kind of sad because the show's quality goes like this,
Yeah,
and then the
roof by the
viewership
end.
goes like the so it's like wow, that kind of sucks. But yeah, I was pleased to see it in the top 5. I mean, especially as number 2 because Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek. So yeah.
Well, and then after that, we have Justice League of America, The Tornado's Path,
Mhm.
Doctor Who, Empire of the Wolf, and Dragon Ball Z Volume 8, which Dragon Ball Z, is a hot year for anything Akira Toriyama because of his passing last year. So, but that was a fun one to, be able to kind of have the nostalgia. And then, of course, I like to dress up for a lot of the episodes. So I had my ridiculous looking Goku-esque outfit where the towels that I stuffed into my shirt were like slowly drooping down and it didn't look good by the end of the episode.
That's part of the fun of the YouTube channel, though, is it's seeing those sort of faux pas happen in real time throughout the video. Watching everything here sort of start to drift, and
I'm definitely not. I'm definitely an amateur cosplayer, and I don't even know if I would call it cosplay because it's basically just like, hey, do I have a coat? Okay, I'll put that on and pretend that I'm a character. Like,
hey, why not?
Reused my Jedi robe like 4 times for different episodes, and the Darkwing Duck one, I basically used the near mask that goes over your eyes to where you can't see, and I kind of just put them up a little bit higher so I could see. So not very accurate, but it's fun.
I still have I've forgotten to put this online and I need to find it because it's relevant to the podcast, but I need to find a picture of me as a kid when mom built my Darkwing Duck Halloween costume because that's something that people should see because she did use like a wire thing that you can like bend into different shapes. Anyway, she made like a felt beak over that. And like actually it would like wrap around my face so I had the beak and everything. And this is back in the days of like, you don't have a lot of money, so your parents just make you the costume, which is probably not a thing anymore. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've been a Darkwing Duck fan forever, so it was super cool.
You can show that off, and then I'll show off the picture of me in my Donatello outfit.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Ninja Turtle, not the artist.
Not the Renaissance artist, yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
So as far as our top 5 favorites, the comics that we seem to enjoy the most were Darkwing Duck was number 1. Mostly, I think, because of that nostalgia factor. I think we could have read just about anything Darkwing Duck, and as long as it had the same tone of the show, we probably would have rated it high because it's just fun to be in that world. And then Dragon Ball Z, we really like that because it is Dragon Ball Z. It is the original material, so it's good. Star Wars Thrawn, I was surprised to see that one was so high up because Mike's always been adverse to Star Wars just because that was the thing that you did was you either like Star Trek or you like Star Wars. And it was like, well, I like Star Trek, so there's no Star Wars. Whereas I was kind of like, well, Star Wars is, it's cool, it's actiony, whatever. And then I started to
Mhm.
really get into it. So that was cool that I could share something with you that you actually like really enjoyed. You gave it a 4. So
It's by far my highest rated Star Wars anything. And in fact, I like it better than most of the movies and other Star Wars media that I've consumed because it was just so like grounded. It felt like everything was kind of fleshed out and explained finally. And Thrawn is such a like I don't know if charismatic is the right word for him, but he's like an interesting character. So doing this kind of like character study on him felt like I don't know, like it was a revelation that something like that could exist in the Star Wars universe. So yeah, I really enjoyed that a lot.
yeah. And then Hawkeye versus Deadpool, which was our last episode of the
Mm-hmm.
season. We really liked that one. And then we did like Buffy the Long Way Home. That was in our top
Yeah,
5. So that got a, what, average score of
like 3.75.
3.75? Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's of note, I guess, that there was something with a 3 point something in our top 5 this year. That means that we must have been a little harsher on stuff than normal because I feel like our top 5 are usually all 4s or something like that when we get to the end of the year. So, um, but there were a few reviews this year I remember feeling that they were like totally fine, but kind of like middling. So
Yeah.
we ended up on a lot of stuff where we might be passionate about the character, but the story we picked wasn't exactly like our favorite thing ever. So
Or we're only reading like 6 issues of a 12-issue run, and
yeah,
those first 6 issues didn't give us enough that we wanted to continue with the additional, 6
right.
issues. So there was some of that too. But I actually gave out 2 5 banana ratings as well.
Yeah.
I think last year was the first year we gave out any 5s, and then this year I gave out 2. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you
Mm-hmm.
gave any 5s. I don't think you did.
I gave Berserker a 5 last year. I didn't give anything a 5 this year. But Berserker just really,
Berserker! Sorry,
yeah,
I had to do it.
Berserker. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it's actually one of the things that I produced bonus content on this year because they wrote some more stories with Keanu Reeves and various like guest artists in a trade that just had some kind of side stories about him. So
Yeah.
there's another review up there about that as well if you're looking for it, but it's just me talking to no one. So
Well, hey, there were 219 plays on that on YouTube,
my
so
gosh,
somebody was watching it.
it's insane to me.
So for our after shows, we did something a little bit different this year where, previously we talked about the writer and the artist as part of the episode, and we felt
Mhm.
like we still wanted to talk about those things, but as far as the episode went, it was like kind of too much information to pack in. It's like we want to give you the background of what it is that we're reading so you can kind of have some context when we go and start talking about it. So we're like, okay, here's the writer, here's the penciler, here are the characters, here's the story, and the whole episode was like pretty much background, and we didn't have a lot of time
Right.
for discussion. So we moved the writer and penciler discussions to the after shows, so that way anybody who's interested in those things can watch those after shows and get that information. And I think it's good too because I'm not really somebody who remembers every single name and is impressed by whoever it is that they are, but I do like to see, if I read something by somebody that I like, then something else comes along that is by that same writer or that same penciler, I kind of already know that I might enjoy it. Kind of like you see a movie and you're like, oh, Harrison Ford's in it. Well, I'm going to check it out just because it's Harrison Ford, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and as far as actors go, Keanu Reeves is probably one of those people for me. So it makes sense that I really enjoyed his comic book writing as well. And the various pencilers just basically drawing Keanu Reeves into the comic.
Yeah.
I was really surprised with our after show numbers this year, though, because there are several where the views on the after show are higher than the views on the episode itself. And that doesn't make sense to me. If someone wants to get in the comments on YouTube or you want to get in the comments on Spotify or wherever you do it, please let me know why it is that you would be more interested in our discussion about Amanda Daybert and whoever the penciler was for Darkwing Duck, I forget, as opposed to the actual discussion on the story, because
Mhm.
that's fascinating to me. I would not think that the background info on the creators would be something that people would seek out over like the meat of the episode. So anyway, if somebody wants to give us feedback on that, that would be great, because I would really love to know like why did you pick this over the episode itself?
So our top 5 most played after shows are the Darkwing Duck after show, Star Wars Thrawn after show, Deep Space Nine, the Dog of War after show, the Buffy after show, and the Dragon Ball Z after show. So I think that makes sense that, these were kind of our top episodes, that these are also our top after shows.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And our viewership isn't quite as high there. I'm not particularly bothered by that. I think it's just nice if you want that background information, it's there. But it's nice to have something out there that it's like, but you don't have to watch it to understand anything. So I'm really glad that I think it was probably you that made that suggestion. But just talking to some people throughout the last year, they were like, well, I want to get into the story quicker, and like I'm here for your discussion. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That people wouldn't so much just want an info dump. So I think that was a good change that we made.
The only exception on the after shows is the Star Wars Thrawn after show, which was the second highest played after show of the entire season, yet it was the third least played episode. So people didn't tune in to actually hear us talk about the comic. They wanted to hear us talk about, I guess, Thrawn in general. So maybe that's, people are looking for more of the discussions about, opinions and thoughts and ideas versus actually talking about, the source material, which if you've already read it, maybe you're like, well, I don't really care what your opinion is. I've already read it. I just want to hear some interesting tidbits or trivia or, something.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But our least played episodes were Edenwood, Hawkeye versus Deadpool, but that one just came out like, what, a week or two ago?
That's what I was saying earlier about some of this isn't really fair because it's like, it's only been out for, a week or something. So,
but Star Wars Thrawn has been out for a while. Cloak and Dagger Shades of Grey, that one's been out for a while. And then the X-Files, which, okay, so Cloak and Dagger being kind of a, an obscure group of characters, maybe people are just like, who the heck is that? And weren't as interested.
Yeah, Cloak and Dagger aren't like top tier Marvel characters as far as popularity, but they're characters that we like. So I think we've said from the beginning, like we have to have the interest to do stuff. So we're not just going to do Batman every week because he's popular. So yeah, I was glad that we reviewed that story because it was fun to talk about, even if it wasn't like our most highest rated or whatever. So.
And I got that one out of the bargain bin at the bookstore. So it was kind of nice to like, hey, $5 and I got a trade to read and review for the podcast. So that was fun too.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes things will get slotted into the schedule because I go, hey, I bought this a while ago. I haven't read it yet. I need a reason to like make myself read it. So let's review it. And then I have to read it,
Yeah.
So I've got a few like that coming up next year, which we can discuss a little bit later.
I was kind of surprised to see the X-Files in our bottom 5. Like, I think there's more of a following for X-Files, but maybe since, Gillian Anderson is like, I'm done with Scully, people are moving on from it. I don't know.
Maybe it's just been out of like the public consciousness for too long. I don't know.
Maybe.
But then you would think that Buffy would have been out of the public consciousness even longer.
True.
So,
but that's kind of more like a teen drama vampire thing, which is always popular.
I think it has a more devoted fan base too than the X-Files does, or at least a more vocal one, probably. So
I will say that since we recorded that episode, I continued rewatching the X-Files and made it all the way through almost the end of season 9. We're like 4 episodes out and I'm just like, I can't do any more. So there's, what is it? I think the first 5 seasons are solid. Season 6, I think, was pretty good. Season 7, I think, is when it started to slow to a crawl and it was like excruciatingly painful for a couple episodes to get through them.
Wow.
And then they
just as a pacing issue or as like just the overall narrative wasn't moving anymore?
So like I think that they had the formula down of Mulder and Scully and the X-Files and the Creature of the Week and the Syndicate and, the overarching plot, and it was all balanced. And then I think what happened was things became out of balance, where we got more narrative that didn't make sense, or we got more narrative like of the overarching story that was just like too much. and then we didn't get enough of what the X-Files did best. And then we tried to force, Mulder and Scully into this romantic relationship, which was kind of awkward and weird. And
Yeah.
then David Duchovny's like, you know what? I think I've done all I can do with Mulder. I'm out of here. So he's gone for like almost all of, I think it's season 7 or season 8. But then he comes back in the next season for a little bit. But then David Duchovny says, well, I came back. I did some stuff with Mulder. But this is really a group show now because now you've got Doggett and you've got Reyes and you've got Scully. So I'm kind of out of here. But Scully's there pretty much the whole time until season 9, where Doggett and Reyes start being more prominent. And
I see.
Doggett is really kind of like, why is this guy here at first? But by the end, I really like his character. Like, I'm really glad. And I wished what they would have done was they would have just taken what Mulder and Scully were doing and transferred it to Reyes and Doggett and let them carry the torch. But I think they just tried to go in too many different directions and do different stuff that they lost sight of what the original draw of the show was.
And Doggett Peacemaker's father / the T-1000? Is that the actor? Okay, I thought so. Forgive me, I can't think of the actor's name, but he's great in everything.
He was also in Die Hard 2. He gets shot up by Bruce Willis.
That's right. Not the best Die Hard movie, I don't think. I like the first one. I think I like Die Hard 3. I don't remember Die Hard 2 very well.
It's the one at the airport.
Oh, that's right. Sloan is in that too, isn't he? I think he is.
Yeah.
The actor
Sloan,
that plays Sloan.
And also Colm Meaney, Chief O'Brien.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a scene where basically Sloan is tricks this plane into landing, but he changes the whatever so that the plane crashes. And Colm Meaney, Chief O'Brien, is the one who is. So what's really hilarious too is Sloan actually does the actor does this Tai Chi skit naked in the first part of the movie to show that he's, like a really bad villain, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious because I was like, that would be so funny to take a clip of that and then intersplice it with Dr. Bashir seeing Sloan in his quarters going, what are you doing here, Sloan? You need to get out of here. And then see Sloan going, like completely naked.
Yeah. Oh
but anyway,
my gosh.
I think we got off on too much of a tangent there, but
No, that's what this is about. That's great. It's been a long time since I've seen Die Hard 2. But Die Hard is a good franchise. Surely comic books exist of Die Hard.
That would
maybe not. I don't know.
Kind of interesting, but yeah. So our lowest rated comics that we reviewed, the one that we gave the lowest score to was Pearl. And that was mostly because of me. I gave it a 2. You gave it a 3.5, which is better than average, but that averaged out to 2.75. So that made that one the lowest. Also, JLA The Tornado's Path was pretty low. We gave that a 3.0. I gave it a 2, you gave it a 4. So we were really on different ends of the spectrum there. I think that was our most diverse score probably.
Yeah, so I kind of like, for discussion purposes, when we do have a big difference of opinion like that. And I think the problem with JLA Tornado's Path is there was too much continuity, too many characters, and I think for you, it threw you into the middle of it a little bit too much. And if I remember correctly, you weren't super satisfied with John Smith's character arc either, where he basically gets a taste of humanity and then gets it ripped away from him. And that's kind of like what happens. And then they form the team at the end. So it kind of ended on an upswing for the team, but not for Red Tornado personally. So I think that was, if I remember correctly, that was one of your major gripes about it. Pearl was a difference of just, you're kind of like, this isn't really my genre.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm not going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it, where I was kind of like, oh yeah, I like what Bendis and Gaydos are cooking here. And I think that they're very at home in this genre and everything. So,
I think that's one thing that we do with our ratings is we're not rating it on a technical level. We're not rating it on, how well was it received or anything like that. We're rating it on we're rating it on how do we personally feel about it. Like
Sure.
Pearl may be a technically, well-written comic that a lot of people love, but I really wasn't into it, so I rated it low. But that doesn't mean
Sure.
that it's bad. It just means that it's not for me. So,
Right.
but that's good when we have those kind of contrasting views because then, you may like something that I don't, I may like something that you don't, and we both have our reasons so that, it makes
Sure.
sense. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong.
Well, and I do think that Bendis is one of those creators that we've mostly been on the same page about in the past. So it was kind of good to find something where it's like, oh, this is a creative team we've looked at before, but we don't feel the same about the
Mhm.
results this time. So
Yeah.
that was kind of cool.
And then
Edenwood,
yeah.
I just want to say real quickly, you talked earlier about we try and make stuff understandable for the audience. I listened to that episode back, and if you're lost, I get you. We were lost when we were reading it. So that's got a lot to do with that. We try to make stuff accessible, but when they're packing like 10 to 12 issues worth of narrative and world building into 5 issues, it's a little hard for us to break that down in a way that makes sense. So
Yeah.
sorry if nobody, was able to follow that.
But yeah, like you said, we weren't able to follow it either. So it's kind of like, I don't know why this happened. I don't know why this character did this. I
Yeah.
don't know why, and those answers may be in the latter half of that run, but
Right. I did
we,
reach out to Tony S. Daniel on Instagram, and he said that the second half of the book is done, but he's basically looking for some funding from Image for like marketing and things of
mm,
that nature before he's going to release the next 5 issues. So it is something that's continuing, and I think it has potential to go up a little bit. So
okay.
yeah.
And then we both gave Doctor Who Empire of the Wolf a 3. I
Mm-hmm.
think just that was another one of like expectations versus kind of understanding what was going on. And part of it was, I think our last Doctor Who review suffered from this too, is where we were reviewing like book 2 or volume 2 or whatever. And
Sure.
so we didn't have the information from the first volume. So there were some stuff that they didn't explain, they kind of just gave you, and we're like, who is this
Mm-hmm.
person? Why is there an Empress Rose? What's going on with this? And it kind of detracted from the enjoyment because we're like trying to understand things. So that could have been
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it's a shame when you have was it Paul McGuigan? Is that his name?
Paul
That played
McGann?
or Paul McGann,
Yeah.
sorry, McGuigan is like a film director or something.
Hmm.
Paul McGann. Yeah, it's a shame when you have him who has so many limited appearances and you finally do more with him and put him in this comic, and that it wasn't like really that exciting, but it just felt like it was a very like quick, like we're going from point A to point B kind of thing, and then it's over, and not that much changed. And I don't know. I think there were a lot of character motivations that we were kind of going
Yeah.
like, this could have been better implemented. So sometimes when I read something that has a lot of potential and then that potential isn't realized, that will make me score it even lower because I'm like, they had such a great idea. Why didn't they go somewhere with it? So, yeah.
Well, and that was kind of our complaints about Steelworks as well, which is
Yeah.
hilarious because
Mm-hmm.
our average score is a 3.38 because I gave it a 3.25 and you gave it a 3.5.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't feel like it was a 3. I felt like it was higher, but I didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was a 3.5, so I went in the middle and it made it funny. But that was another one where I was just like, I felt like what they did with some of this was they kind of ruined their own story by the end.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of wish that things had went in at least a little bit different of a direction or,
Mm-hmm.
and then we got that whole tease at the beginning, like, oh, I'm going to give up being a superhero because we're going to rely on technology now. Like, how
Yeah.
about you take care of the technology first? Let's have that in place. And then you can not put the suit on anymore. But
Yeah.
until we get that, keep the suit on.
Yeah. I will say that since we did that review, I have read all 25 issues of Superman on Warworld by Philip Kennedy Johnson, which is the Superman story that directly precedes this arc.
Okay.
And Natasha Irons is like very involved. She's trapped on Warworld with Superman and the Authority, who are a Wildstorm team. And so there is a lot of backstory that happened going into Steelworks that we were not privy to originally. Now I'm caught up on that. And so my one complaint about the whole perpetual energy thing, why don't we try and make that work, blah, blah, blah. That was actually explained in that previous story, why that wouldn't have been a good thing. And ultimately, it's actually a sentient energy being that they were like taming to create this energy. So it wouldn't have been a good long-term solution to have this thing that was like alive powering the city.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could have found a way to like replicate that artificially or something, but that was a story point that they didn't bring up. Michael Dorn didn't bring up in Steelworks. So if you hadn't read the Superman stuff, hi Serena, hi. If you hadn't read the Superman stuff before, then you wouldn't know any of that, which we didn't have any of that context going in. So some of that was addressed, although I think I'm still pretty happy with my score of 3.5. So.
Well, and Michael Dorn would know that you don't want to use a sentient being for, something like a space station, for example.
Right.
Like the Farpoint station. So
he would know that.
He would know that. Yes. The Data, that was 7 years ago. Well, it was more than that now, but anyway.
Or even having Moriarty as an AI on a space station, like in season 3 of Picard.
You said have the villain be able to defeat Data, not Sherlock Holmes, and the computer knew that, Spock. Oh, sorry. I mixed up my quotes there. Sorry.
It knew that Data.
Yeah, Data.
Yeah.
So... And then as far as our after shows go, the Steelworks after show, the Edenwood after show, the JLA after show, the New Warriors after show, and the Dagger after show were all pretty low on the list.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
After show. So we did make some bonus content this year. We published a Freakazoid clip that's like 45 seconds, but it's just an impromptu discussion between the two of us. And I did some like background graphics and, stuff like that worked out really well. And that got 554 plays, which I think is probably the most plays we've got on anything on YouTube, especially for being 45 seconds. So maybe we should do some more bite-sized stuff. Although we did do a new JLA book that was coming back in December. We did a 1 minute video on that, and that got like 26 plays. So
I don't know. Sometimes it's fun to talk about the solicits and like what's coming up in comic book news. So I just thought it was something we could try, but it hasn't necessarily got a ton of engagement. It's hard to do those sort of off the cuff conversations that are brief because I'm involved. And when I start talking, he keeps talking and talking in one long unbroken sentence, so it's a little bit difficult for me to do short form media, but that one worked out. So.
The Freakazoid one worked out really, really well. So that was a fun surprise because that was fun to talk about, and Freakazoid's so funny that it'd be fun to like review something.
For sure. Well. I think we could extend the limits of this podcast to include like an animated episode, especially since it's by comic book people, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini. I think we could easily do that at some point.
Well, do you have anything else for our 2024 season 4 episodes before we move on to season 5?
I guess just I'm happy with the amount of content that we were able to put out in the last year, especially given that you had a couple moves happen in that time. And, I've had health issues at certain points and also just being the stress of the holiday season that put us behind on things. So I feel like 16 episodes is a pretty big accomplishment given, all that went on in the last year. Ideally, I would like to get into a better rhythm of like about every other week we are recording, but we'll see if that happens. It's life happens. It's not always predictable. So. Yeah.
All right, well, we will take another short break and we'll be right back to give you a sneak peek of 2025.
I like bananas because they have no bones. Yeah, if you got something rhymes with bones. Something that rhymes with bones.
All right, welcome back. Well, as we wrap up our reviews from 2024, we're going to talk about what's coming next year. So if you've ever wondered what the references to bones and boneless in our podcast title mean, well, we kind of came up with an idea this year that it kind of means like bones mean like rigid boundaries. So we're not confined to just one genre, publisher, type of comic, or even just comics, because we're reviewing movies, TV shows, and manga. So instead of doing like an academic review or technical review like other podcasts, we're mixing our own personal anecdotes, subjective ratings, and kind of ridiculous humor, and especially some ridiculous cosplays in there
That's
as
right.
well. And even with the artwork and the music that we do for each episode too, kind of just making it our own thing. So I think that, you know, we didn't necessarily have a reason why we were calling it boneless or why we like comics that have no bones, other than it was a catchy song from
Space
Space
Ghost.
Ghost.
Space
Yeah.
Ghost, Coast to Coast. Actually,
So-
that might go back further. I think that's Cartoon Planet.
Really?
But
Huh.
yeah, they got really musical on Cartoon Planet, which is why you have "I Like Beans" as a song, and driving down Highway 40 in my big old pickup truck.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did like the little music video things.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's really why we chose that title, just because that was something that was fun, and you know, we had to come up with something. But I think this year, like, really calling us like, we like comics because they have no bones. We like comics because, you know, we like comics, we like movies, we like manga, we like TV shows, we like art and music and all kinds of stuff. So
There's
we
no
just like
strict
stuff.
sort of guidelines. And a lot of podcasts have sort of a rubric that they go by as well. And as far as like, this is how we determine our rating. Does it meet these criteria?
Right.
And that's how we determine our numerical rating. We don't really do that, but I think that actually allows us a little bit more freedom to be like, that maybe this was executed well, but it just wasn't for me, or you know, whatever. And hopefully hearing different opinions can make somebody listening to it go, oh, well, maybe I'm more like Mike, or maybe I'm more like Joe. Maybe that's not a genre that I enjoy. And so hopefully hearing different viewpoints can kind of give you an idea of whether or not you would enjoy something as far as buying comics.
Or
I do know for a fact that we have made a sale of the Star Wars Thrawn trade as a result of that review. So it may not have gotten a lot of views, but I know someone personally that listened to the review and was like, I'm going to go buy that. So
nice.
there you go.
Yeah, and you should definitely read the novels by Timothy Zahn too. Like his writing style is really good, and he'll mix different scenes with different characters together. You get a little bit of that in the comic, but in the novel, it's really like you're almost hearing like two different stories, and then they start to slowly come together. So it's really neat.
I was going to ask about Timothy Zahn. So does he shift between the perspective of Thrawn himself and then the sort of, forgive me, I forget her name, but the female main character that was sort of rising politically? Yeah. Does he switch between their perspectives and their stories as well?
So we get a lot more Price in the novel, and in that novel in particular, about his origin, and kind of, you know, what's going on with her, a little more of her backstory and how she gets from point to point and eventually meets up with Thrawn. And so they meet up, and then they go kind of separate directions, and then they meet up again, and then like it all kind of happens the same. It's just you get more in between to kind of see how they get from each point. But it was actually interesting. Like when I first started reading it, I was kind of like, you know, because I knew who she was from watching Star Wars Rebels, but I was like, I don't know that I necessarily need to go into her backstory this much to find out how she becomes a crappy governor and eventually gets killed, you know. Like I don't spoilers, but
whoa.
Like I don't need that much about her. But then as I kept reading the book, I was like, okay, this is actually interesting. It's entertaining. So I'll go with it. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, that's a pretty good segue talking about Thrawn, because next year we're basically going to be doing Year of the Villain, which was a DC event, but I think we can keep that, you know, as a sort of theme for our year, because you can expect episodes that are going to feature iconic antagonists like Deathstroke, Captain Boomerang, Doctor Doom, Dr. Octopus, Negaduck, and even Shadow the Hedgehog with his upcoming one-shot comic. And since you have last looked at our notes, I have lurched the Ninja Turtles review into a villain direction as well. Oh, nice. Because just like we had a series of one-shots about the heroes of TMNT, they made one called TMNT Villains. That is a series of one-shots about various Ninja Turtle villains. So that would be really cool for us to look at, I figured. So I've got that. We do have some other things mixed in there, however, that are not strictly within those guidelines. So
Yeah. And so our other theme that we're going to kind of explore is basically like millennia nostalgia, which I think that's a theme that we always, circle back to because it's
we
just,
are millennials, so there you go.
yeah. Like I've been watching 90s movies. I mentioned Die Hard 2. We also rewatched True Lies and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
nice.
I feel like I'm in such a better place to appreciate it because I'm older, I have more life experience, but also just the way that the world has changed or how technology has changed things. Or, like Die Hard 2 is a movie about airport security and terrorism in like 1991, I think.
Right.
So, 10 years before things
Right.
really went down. So the rules are just way different. So it's kind of interesting to be like, yeah, no, that would not happen the same. But anyway, so millennial nostalgia. So we're going to look at Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. You mentioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, some gargoyles. We've been wanting to get back to that. And then maybe some quirky where we have different characters interacting with each other, like DC meets Looney Tunes or, some kind of weird team ups.
So I'm going to sell that idea to you in like one sentence. So what if Lobo was hired by Wile E. Coyote to kill the Roadrunner? And imagine what that story would be. And so that right there justifies them doing that event, right? All by itself. But there's really only 4 issues in that I want to look at, although I do own a few of them in singles. But we've got Batman and Elmer Fudd. I know that sounds crazy, but it works somehow.
That one's kind of, yeah.
Marvin the Martian and Martian Manhunter. So we get to see the Martians from both universes interact.
Okay.
We have Sylvester the Cat and Catwoman versus Black Canary and Tweety Bird. And then of course Wile E. Coyote and Lobo versus the Roadrunner. So yeah, they somehow made it work and it was a lot of fun. So that's something not to be taken real seriously, but I thought if we get to it, that would be a fun one to look at. So.
Yeah, that could be fun. I don't know how I'll dress up as a cartoon character, but we'll figure it out.
I don't know. And of course, no year would be complete without revisiting some of our favorite franchises. You can expect another review from Star Trek, Star Wars, and maybe even Babylon 5. I have done a little bit of research into that, and it looks like Titan Comics, the publisher that puts out Doctor Who, has done some Babylon 5 comics in the past. So that's probably where we're going to be looking at, if we can find that. So
yeah. So we've got a lot of good stuff lined up. At least it's good for us because it's all stuff we're interested in.
Yeah.
We tend to pick things that we like or that we're interested in. So I don't think we really give anything a really terrible review unless it's like The Addams Family, where it's a ripoff of a cartoon, or if it's something that we know extremely well that doesn't really fit the tone of what it comes from, like with Ratchet and Clank. We didn't care for the way that they portrayed that. And maybe we'll throw in some stuff where, one of us has experience with the property where the other one doesn't. Because that was a lot of fun with Nier, where you're just like, I don't know what this is. This isn't that great. And then you go back and you're like, oh my gosh.
It's so good.
Yeah. So, we also want to get some listener participation so you can help shape our content because we have a list of stuff that we're working on. But if there's a villain that you think would be cool for us to cover, maybe one that we're not even familiar with, it would be kind of fun to tackle something new that we've never, maybe never even heard of before. Or some kind of, nostalgic favorite that you'd like to revisit, let us know. Maybe there's a hidden gem out there that maybe we've overlooked. Tell us in the comments or on YouTube or on social media. Let us know and we'll give you a shout out on the podcast and say, hey, thanks for the suggestion. And then we'll take a look at it.
One of our listeners suggested that I buy the Tornado's Path a few years ago. And that kind of got me into Brad Meltzer's run on JLA, which I did overall enjoy his run. But yeah, I really like when people engage and sort of go, hey, this is something I'm interested in. Why don't you guys take a look at it? Pearl was another one of those. We had a few listeners that were like, hey, maybe you could review this. And I'm always open to that. I mean, it's cool to have other opinions and other perspectives out there and to, maybe we can find stuff that we wouldn't necessarily normally necessarily gravitate to with you guys helping us. So yeah,
Mhm.
always open to that. I can tell you, our listener Nate, who has been with us from the beginning, that although we are covering a Deathstroke story this next year, it does have a very strong Teen Titans tie to it. So that's going to be something that's going to make him happy. And I'm going to make darn sure that I do my research properly, because he will correct me if I get anything wrong. So
The pressure's on.
that's right.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this special episode of We Like Comics Because They Have No Bones. Make sure you rate us on your podcast platform of choice, and also comment, like, and subscribe on YouTube. And don't forget to check out our after shows where the discussion continues, and our bonus content where we just have some fun or discuss, upcoming trends in comics.
Yeah. So any suggestions you guys have, make sure to post those on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast, on Instagram, on TikTok, on, most of the platforms, or on Blue Sky at Boneless Comics 1. And make sure to use our hashtag Boneless Comics Podcast. And who knows, your suggestion might be featured in an upcoming episode, and we'll give you a shout out for being awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you with our first episode coming up soon.
That's right.
Peace.
Live long and prosper.
We like
Comics.
Comics.
because they